Yassas. Welcome to Greek Like Me, the podcast about all things Greek. I'm your host, Pamela Diodes Wood. Email us at stealthgreek@gmail.com to share comments, questions, and stories about anything and everything Greek. Kalimera σας παιδιά. I'm writing this while cleaning the house top to bottom for the holidays, shoveling yesterday's snowfall, trying to fit the gigantic tree our daughter and her boyfriend brought home into our dining room, and scrambling to finish Christmas shopping. Something that wouldn't be an issue if we followed the Greek tradition of exchanging gifts on New Year's, aka the feast day of St. Basil. For Greeks, Christmas is a religious feast, not the time for gift giving, except to the needy. It's a time of rest and refreshment, of pareia, gathering with family and friends. There are parties, dances, and preparation for the new year. There are many beautiful and downright strange traditions for Ellenika Christougena, Greek Christmas, including caroling, sweetbread, bonfires, and Christmas goblins. A few customs were surprising to me. Others, when fully explained, made my childhood make sense. Greeks celebrate Dodaka Imeron, the 12 days of Christmas, which begins and ends with major feast days, the Nativity on the 25th, through Theophany or Epiphany on January 6th, the day the three kings visited the Christ child, as well as the feast day of the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist in the River Jordan. And literally every day is part of the larger celebration of the visible, physical manifestation of God, Theophania. We'll discuss the Feast of St. Basil and Epiphany traditions in our next episode. There's just so much. The deepest, darkest days of winter have always been a time of celebration in Greece. The anticipation of moving from the darkest days of the year to the slow return of light, of good over evil. In ancient Greece, the birth of Dionysos celebrated this emergence into growing light from December 23rd to January 8th. And there have been comparisons made to the Christian festival of light. The mother of Dionysos was mortal. His father was a god, Zeus. He was called a savior and divine infant. Maybe because he was credited with bringing winemaking to Greece? I think that should count. The priests of Dionysos carried a pastoral staff, much like Jesus, the Good Shepherd. It shows humans have forever been looking for a guiding path through the darkness. To Greeks, who more than 80% of whom identify as Orthodox Christians, Christmas is a religious feast. 40 days before, Greeks prepare themselves with a nativity fast. 40 days without meat, animal products, fish, wine, swearing, arguing, gossiping. World Book's Christmas in Greece describes it perfectly. To fast means to demonstrate self-control over temptations, sins, unkind feelings, and material desires. It's 40 days of watching our behavior, praying, being mindful, humble, giving to the poor and to the community. This is why I appreciate Orthodox waiting until the New Year to exchange gifts. In Western countries like the US, we focused more on the gift exchange than being humble and remembering those without. Christmas is about acknowledging and giving to the poor, as well as wishing all good things to your neighbors. That said, many well-loved formerly pagan customs became part of Greek Christmas tradition, including kalanta, the Greek equivalent of Christmas carol. The origins of kalanta may have begun in ancient times as a tribute to the goddess Kiveli, the great mother of humans and beasts, goddess of nature and mountains. Her priests traveled village to village, blessing people, freeing them from demons. They were given food and money in thanks. In classical Greece, during festivals for the harvest gods, Dimitre, Dionysos, and others, young men went door to door carrying olive branches wrapped in wool, hung with fruits, bread, and jars of honey, singing for the health and good fortune of the homeowners, and to ward off evil in exchange for treats. The tradition continued in Christianity, with boys going door to door in small groups carrying triangles and drums, singing for the health and good fortune of the homeowners in exchange for treats or coins. In time, girls began to participate. Thank you very much. The songs for good fortune and good health sung by children were believed more likely to come true because they were considered pure and therefore more favorable to God and gods. Visits from the singers begin at daybreak and continue until sunset. Now it's often groups of men carrying more traditional instruments who visit neighborhood homes. The carolers begin with greetings, then etiquette insists they ask if they may continue. The response is positive for the sake of good luck. The carols sing blessing on the man of the house and the family. Then come the carols of the season, often rhyming. The songs are still old-timey, many handed down since Byzantine times, still sung in archaic Greek with poetic allusions to the gospel and other scripture, according to EmbraceTheMiddleEast.com. Keeping the theme of approaching light, they sing of Christ as the light of knowledge, the Son of righteousness, dawn from heaven. The calendar could be regional, with special songs for blessing crops, livestock, and good soil for farmers, or good wishes to fishermen for their boats, good weather, and an excellent catch. And plenty of them bow to the social customs of days long gone by. Lyrics of one from Kriti are, I bid you good month, and may you have an all-female herd and male offspring. Yeah, it's a little dated. A popular calendar from the islands is, for you, my lord, an armed frigate would be fit with towering stern and lion-like prow, to have the masts worked out of brass and rigs made of wire, to have sails cut out of silk and sail yards steely made. And, one to the point, a calendar from Limnos. Go on, my lord, go on. Put your hand inside your pocket. Don't spare the gold coins. The calendar are meant to be angelic and sweet-sounding, but sometimes they're deliberately sung off-key to scare off the kalikansari, the Christmas goblins. This is also the purpose of playing the triangles or trigona. The shape as well as the noise would scare the little demons. The triangle represents Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We'll get into the kalikansari later. Sometimes rewards for the singers differs by region. In Kavala, in northeastern Greece, east of Thessaloniki, boys singing the kalanta once carried pointed skewers in expectation of receiving a piece of meat from every home. The boys in Kavala would go house to house, and a slice of meat would be added to the skewer at each one until they had enough for their own feast. That's pretty wild. On mainland Greece, in Mayaya and Papu's day, singers were offered chestnuts, walnuts, and sweet buns. Rewards in my mother's childhood would have been fruit, nuts, or Christmas cookies like courbiades or melamacarona. Today, rewards include chocolates or other candies, along with money and traditional treats. We'll share one more kalanta from Thraki, or Thrace, in northeastern Greece, describing the experience of Mary in labor. Christ is born bright as a sun, as the new moon, as a tall lad. Good Mary, lying in labor, begged her women, help me, I pray, in this blessed hour, this glorious hour, and go fetch the midwife. Until they go and come back, Christ is born as the new moon, as a tall lad. George Mega, in Greek calendar customs, points out Christ's birth is viewed as the birth of any child, and the Theotokos, the mother of God, is viewed as an average woman suffering the pangs of childbirth. Which brings us to the Orthodox icon of the Nativity, which illustrates the humanity of the Holy Family. At the center is the Theotokos and child lying in a cave, where Jesus was born in Greek tradition. Caves are extremely common in Greece, and back in the day were used to house livestock, so the cave was the manger. The symbolism of the cave in the icon is the darkness before Christ came. The gold paint surrounding it is the light of Christ. The Theotokos gazes at her husband Yosef, looking a little bit worried. He has wandered away, overwhelmed that his wife has given birth to a child that isn't his. Lucifer, disguised as an old man, stands near Yosef, feeding his doubts and fears. My son explained to me years ago that the creepy-looking figure in the simple cloak that belongs in our manger set is Lucifer. I wanted to leave him in the box. But my son assured me the creepy dude is an important part of the Christ story. Yosef's fears and doubts are human, and they'll be wiped away by the light of the child and trust in God. In the lower right corner of the icon sit the midwives, preparing a bath for the newly born baby because childbirth is messy. The Theotokos' need for midwives, the concern she felt for her husband's fears and doubts, the child's birth in the cold cave, all remind us of the challenges facing every family under trying circumstances, and the sacrifices this family made for their faith. Meanwhile, in the upper part of the icon, the Magi follow the star toward the cave, and angels reassure fearful shepherds. Like all Orthodox iconography, it tells a full and multi-layered story to the faithful, most of whom were functionally illiterate for generations. The poorest and least educated understood the religion as well as the wealthy and well-read because of the visual representation of Scripture. We'll post a photo of the icon of the Nativity on the website sources page taken by Douglas John at St. Nicholas Constantine and Helen Church in Roseland, New Jersey. For more about the importance of icons in Orthodoxy, see our episode from September 7th, 2023. Let's talk about Christmas decorations. Pan-Hellenic Foundation says Greek homes were decorated inside and out with garlands of myrtle, rosemary, and whatever seasonal flowers were available. It's customary to set up a wooden bowl with a small wooden cross wrapped in basil, strung on a wire hanging along the rim. Basil appears in sacred rituals of the church all the time. The bowl is partly filled with water to keep the basil fresh, and so that anyone walking by can dip the cross in the water and sprinkle it to bless the house, keeping evil away, including those maniacal Christmas goblins. A beautiful and very old tradition that I love is the karavaki, or small boat, something Greek online school calls the most Greek tradition you will find in the country around the holidays. There's a huge connection between Greeks and the sea since ancient times. Greece, in fact, has the longest coastline in the Mediterranean basin and over 200 inhabited islands. Some say the tradition of decorating the karavaki was a way to thank St. Nicholas, the patron saint of sailors, or an homage to St. Basil, who traveled by ship. There have always been Greeks who've made their living from the sea, fishermen, sponge divers, ferrymen, sailors delivering goods and cargo between the islands and the mainland and the ports of other countries. Greek Herald says decorating the karavaki has always been a sign of love and respect for the sea and the welcoming of family arriving by boat. It's most popular on the islands and mainland ports, but was practiced throughout Greece. Decorating the boats meant remembering family members at sea during the holidays and praying for their safe return. They were also considered beacons for home to those far away, including the diaspora. I think of my yaya, who sailed to Ellis Island from her home on the Peloponnesos and never saw her mother, brothers, and sisters again. And I wondered, did they decorate a karavaki for her and her older sister, gone forever to America? Greek City Times says 50 years ago, almost every house in Greece decorated a Christmas boat. It became less popular as Christmas trees gained favor, except for the islands. They kept the tradition going. But in the last few years, there's been a revival. More Greeks are including the boats in their Christmas celebrations again. Town centers set up brightly lit boats next to Christmas trees. In marinas, moored boats are covered in bright Christmas lights. Google that. Google the Greek Christmas boat. They're really beautiful. But decorations in a Greek household did not traditionally include Christmas trees, something common in modern Greece. Christmas trees didn't show up until after Greek independence in 1833, when Otto, Prince of Bavaria, was installed as King of Greece. Yes, I know, Otto needs his own episode. King Otto. Another example of Western powers putting one of their own in charge of those uncivilized Greeks born in the cradle of civilization. Christmas trees were a German tradition that Otto brought to Greece with him, but it was an upper-class thing. Rich folks followed the trend set by the palace and imported fir trees for the holiday. Because Greece didn't have those kinds of pine trees, they had scrap pines. Now there are Christmas tree farms in Greece, so everyone can have one. Some coastal villages began decorating juniper trees at Christmas in the late 19th and early 20th century. They're kind of wild and scraggly, but really picturesque. I'm betting they looked incredibly beautiful, decked out for the holidays. Mostly food-based ornaments were used, like figs and nuts wrapped in tinfoil. And they put candles in the trees. It sounds charming. But when they did become part of the Christmas celebration in Greek homes, the decorated tree didn't make its appearance until Christmas Eve. This explains why my mother had an obsession with putting her tree up on Christmas Eve. No sooner, which made our American dad crazy. But we did it for decades. And the bright lights of the Christmas tree became one more way to keep the kalekansori at bay. Those Christmas goblins keep popping up. Dark, hairy, malevolent creatures with glowing red eyes, sharp teeth, the legs of a donkey and the arms of monkeys ending in sharp claws. The little demons live under the earth for most of the year, chopping away at the tree of life that holds up the world. Just before they destroy the tree, which would also destroy the earth, they escape from the underworld, attracted by the celebrating, and run amok for the 12 days of Christmas, hiding away in dark corners before the sun rises each day. The 12 days are known as the unclean days, because although Jesus has been born, he's not yet been baptized, which will result in blessing the waters of the entire earth. The good thing is that while they're busy tormenting humankind with pranks, violence, and mayhem, the tree of life is renewed. Mankind is saved. The antics of the kalekansori may be an offshoot of an ancient Greek festival of the dead, when Hades opened the gates of the underworld to free the dead, allowing them to roam the earth. They ruined food by shriveling it with their deathly aura and terrorized the people. But, Pedia, this pales in comparison to the evil practiced by the Christmas demons. They don't just spoil food, they pee in it. They lick it. Flowers wilt from their foul breath. Kalekansori enter homes through the chimney to smash and destroy. They move things around and hide them so people can't find them. The kalekansori may live in my house year-round. They attack travelers at night, stealing their belongings, beating them violently, sometimes kidnapping or even killing them. They destroy warehouses full of food or anything they can get their hairy little hands on. They hate humankind and will do anything to torment them. But the smart Greek is prepared for them. Besides bright lights, tinging triangles during Kalanta and holy water, wary Greeks have many other defenses against the kalekansori at their disposal. First, incense. Throwing a handful of salt or an old shoe into the fireplace. Plants that smoke excessively or make snapping noises as they burn, like wild asparagus, thistle, or pine, are tossed on the fire to keep kalekansori at bay, and probably also the neighbors. The Christmas log has an entire setup as a defense system, and we'll get into that in a minute. The lower jawbone of a pig repels kalekansori, whether hung on the front door or tossed in the fire, and I do not know where that came from. The clever housewife places a colander by the front door because the demons can't resist counting the holes. But they cannot count past 3. While they are completely absorbed in counting, they forget to creep into a dark hole before sunrise, when the bright light of the new day blasts them out of existence. But there are other ways besides the home alone approach. Some Greeks lure the kalekansori away by leaving sweets or pancakes on the roof or outside the house, so the demons lose all interest in going inside. They're easily distracted, like monkeys. In northern Greece, bonfires are lit in the village squares. Children sing and ring bells, kryptonite the kalekansori. It's unwise to travel alone after dark, and never without a torch or a bit of holy water. And pity the children born at Christmas. Their fate is not just getting gifts that count for both. These children are doomed to become Kalikansuri, pretty much because their parents must have been intimate during Great Lent. I mean, they're already looked at sideways because we all know what their folks were doing when they were supposed to be praying. The only hope of preventing the child from becoming a demon is for the mother to take special precautions, including tying up the baby with long trusses of garlic or straw to keep it from running off with the Kalikansuri. And my hair is standing on end because that baby can only be at the most 11, 12 days old when it goes off running. That's really creepy. Another remedy is singeing off the baby's toenails because it was believed you couldn't become a Kalikansuri without toenails. I was supposed to be born on Christmas Day. No judging the parents, please. But relieved as a true Greek, I was 1 week late making my arrival. We have an entire episode on antics and crazy stories about the Kalikansuri, posted December 22nd, 2023. Check it out. These dudes are hilarious. We'll move on to the Christmas log and the lit yew, still traditions throughout much of Greece. Legend says when the shepherds first arrived at the cave where Christ was born, it was dark and cold. They found dried yew branches to fire up. Each one held a branch giving light and warmth to the manger. The Athens Center says it was the Magi who used flaming yew branches as torches to light the road on their way to honor Jesus. It was pretty common and is still a custom in some villages for people to light yew branches as they travel the streets at Christmas and carry them inside, maybe to light the Christmas log? I don't know. The Christoxylo, or wood of Christ, is the Christmas log, representing the light of Christ, and it's supposed to burn on the hearth or fireplace for the entire 12 days of Christmas. And bonus, keeps out the Kalikansuri. Traditionally, the head of the house, usually the man, chooses the log to be dedicated to the Nativity. Originally from a pear tree or wild cherry because thorny wood further discouraged the Kalikansuri from coming down the chimney. The Kalikansuri, listen, are on everybody's minds. I looked it up. Pear trees are thorny. Only a few species of cherry trees are, but I'm thinking maybe they're among those that are native to Greece. Greek reporter explains some villages add another log from a different tree. Christokansuro, marrying the fire, uses 2 logs for the nativity fire, one from a tree with a masculine name, the other from a tree with a feminine name chosen by the wife, laid in the fireplace crosswise on the first log to make the shape of the cross. Extra protection. You can't go wrong with the shape of the cross. After the logs burn down to ashes, the lady of the home collects the ashes to spread around the house and fields to protect them from evil. Libations may be offered at the hearth. Magus published his book in 1963, and it was still common to pour oil or wine over the hearth, a remnant of the offerings to the hearth in honor of Estia, the ancient Greek goddess of the hearth and home. I would like to know if people are still doing this, pouring libations on the hearth. Another old Christmas custom was tossing a handful of wheat grain or leaves from an olive tree onto the hot tiles of the hearth to predict the future. The way the grains or leaves burst when they hit the tile foretold whether the person who tossed them was meant to continue to live in the village or was predestined to leave. Sorry, Spiros, look how the leaf popped. Pack your bags. In Western Macedonia, grain or leaves were tossed into the village fountain as well. When we mention Macedonia, we're referring to the Greek province, not the country once known as a province of Yugoslavia. No information on whether throwing the grain into the well was meant to predict the future. But it was believed that water drawn from the village wells or fountains at dawn on Christmas Day had magical powers. This was the water used to mix the yeast that the family would use for the coming year. Homemade yeast is like homemade sourdough. A portion is always saved to continue the next batch. The feeding of the well was first practiced in ancient times to honor the water nymphs, or Nereides. Until well into the 20th century, before indoor plumbing was widespread, most towns and villages had a central well or fountain where residents collected their water. On Christmas Eve at midnight, unmarried women silently approached the village water source, carrying butter and honey. They rubbed the point of the water, the fount, where the water flows, with butter and honey so the water would run sweet and bring good fortune. The first woman to approach and feed the well was gifted good luck for the year. The celebration of the Nativity begins with a Lenten Christmas Eve feast. For some, it includes 12 dishes in all, each dish representing one of the apostles. The Christmas Eve service is late at night, where Old Testament prophecies of the birth of Christ are read. It would be after this service that the young ladies would hurry to feed the well. On Christmas morning, Galanda singers make their rounds, and the church service includes special hymns and readings of the Gospels of the Nativity. On the way home from church, families and friends might stop by at hospitals or homes of the infirm to sing Galanda. The fast is finally broken. Food is a major component of any Greek celebration. If you're sensitive to animals being used as food, you will want to skip this part. I was tempted to do so. The Christmas hog provided the most common meat for the feast. Greeks are usually associated with lamb, and that's definitely a thing. But the hog was something special. Even in ancient times, every household that could afford it had a hog fed year-round to prepare it for the ritual feast sacrifice to the goddess Demetra. As Greeks began to celebrate the birth of Christ, families still carefully fattened the family hog in preparation. Meat like this was a delicacy, and no part of that Christmas hog was wasted. Whatever didn't make it into the feast was still useful. Greek City Times says even the bladder was cleaned and inflated to create a ball given to the children. I'm American, so I prefer to believe my dinner comes packaged directly from the supermarket, not the farm. The center of the feast is the Christopsomo, or Christ bread. Traditionally baked on Christmas Eve, it's a sweetbread, something that's part of all important feast days. Bread is an important Greek staple and symbolizes Christ, who is the bread of life. The loaves are round, representing eternity and the infinite circle of life in the harvest, birth, death, and rebirth. The custom of baking a special bread for a feast day goes back to ancient harvest rituals and offerings, again to the goddess of the harvest, Demetra. Like all feast breads, the Christopsomo is prepared with a prayer and making the sign of the cross over the loaf before placing it in the oven. The biggest difference from other feast day breads is the Christopsomo is more ornamental. Pieces of dough are shaped or engraved on the bread before baking. Usually a cross decorates the middle, sometimes with nuts sprinkled on top to represent prosperity. A common decoration is grapes and vines, or X's representing Christ. The first letter of Christ in Greek is the letter Xi, which looks like an X. The rest of the designs represent the life or profession of the family. A farmer's bread might feature chickens or cows made from dough, or sheaves of wheat and ears of corn. A shepherd's bread would feature sheep, figures of shepherds, and their dogs. A fisherman's bread might be decorated with fish, a boat, fish hooks. Greek-American cookbook goddess Diane Kochilos calls it edible folk art. There's a recipe for Christopsomo on her website. Again, Google, because some of the photos are just incredible, the artwork. The Christopsomo is placed in the center of the feast table, surrounded by dried figs, walnuts, almonds, apples, and a pot of honey. Mega says the Christmas table is called Our Lady's Table, in honor of the Theotokos. Some families cut the bread on Christmas Eve after church, but most cut it at the start of the Christmas feast. In some traditions, before cutting the loaf, the family raises the dining room table slightly 3 times for the Holy Trinity. The first slice of the bread is for Christ. The second is for the poor, and both are placed on the family altar. Then each member of the family receives a slice, starting with the head of the house. One is cut for the house as well. According to Megas, there's a tradition in some regions where the man of the house lays a napkin on his head and breaks the bread over his head while invoking the Holy Trinity because, according to Greek tradition, all wisdom and goodness comes from the head. This would not go over in my mother's house. No. After the slices of chrysopsomo are passed around, each person takes a little honey from the pot, symbolizing the sweetness of life. On farms, smaller loaves or special buns were baked for the cows, sheep, and chickens. Sometimes they were baked in the shapes of the animals. The loaves or buns were crumbled and fed to the animals for protection against illness. I want to share some regional customs for the Christopsomo. Megas describes a custom in Sinope and Pontos, where Greeks planted a small olive branch in the middle of the Christopsomo and hung dried figs, apples, and oranges on it. After dinner, the branch was put on the home altar in front of the icons until the 12 days of Christmas were passed. Then the family brought it down and ate the fruits. In Coroni, first slice of the Chrysopsomo was saved for the first beggar to pass by, which sounds like a true application of the faith. Drymos in Macedonia had a custom of covering the Chrysopsomo with a plate containing wheat, garlic, silver coins, pomegranate, dried fruit, grapes, and a glass of wine for dipping the kalikantsoros buns, sweet treats left out to distract our favorite Christmas villains. In Drama, in northeastern Greece, the Chrysopsomo loaf is baked with a smaller round loaf on top of the larger one to represent Christ and the cave he was born in. In addition to the Chrysopsomo and the hog, traditional dishes for the feast include lamb or goat. Turkey became popular in some homes after the 1800s, but the Christmas feast must include avrolemano, the famous egg and lemon chicken soup my mother, along with every other Greek mitera, made every holiday. Cabbage tomadas are common, spanakopita, tiropita, roasted potatoes, olives, cheese like feta, casseri, cavalotiri, some pasticcio would be nice. I could go on. Megas says on Macedonian Christmas tables, white beans and koliva broth were a must, with every person expected to take 3 spoonfuls of each. He doesn't elaborate. I've been eating koliva, a boiled wheat dish sweetened with sugar, raisins, pomegranate, and Jordan almonds, for my entire life, and I have no idea what koliva broth is. Is it a savory boiled wheat broth? Megas doesn't explain this either, and I couldn't find anything. If anyone can explain this, please email us because I want to know. And there are the traditional sweets for Christmas that we all grew up with. Curibiedes, those round butter cookie powdered sugar bombs. Melamokarana, aka finica, the delicious honey cookie. Kurlakia, twisted cookies, great for dipping in cafes. Baklava, lucomadas, portocalopita, oh my. And pomegranates. Pomegranates are an ancient symbol of good luck, prosperity, and fertility. They find their way to the Christmas table. They're used as decorations. They're hung above the front door throughout the 12 days of Christmas. I remember eating them every Christmas time. And now we come to an awesome regional custom described by George Statakis in his photojournal, Northern Greece's Pagan Customs of Christmas. Statakis is an award-winning photographer who travels throughout Greece recording regional costumes and customs. We interviewed him for our episode Greek Traditions in Black and White in April 2025. One of the Christmas traditions he documented is the bonfires of the regional district of Flourinas in northern Greece. Ancient Greeks set bonfires to honor the sun god Ilios. In northern Greece, the customs live on in honor of the birth of Christ and the first Christmas Eve when shepherds kept watch. Statakis, who visited the villages and spoke to the inhabitants, cites the December 23rd to January 8th homage to Dionysos we mentioned earlier. By December 23rd, children in Florinos begin gathering wood and hay for the bonfires in the town squares. The residents build these towering structures that they set alight close to midnight. The locals gather around the fire, drinking wine and eating roasted sausages. They sing and dance with bells. It sounds incredible. Smaller towns set their fires late in the evening, but before midnight, when the fires at the regional capital, also known as Florinas, are lit. The fires at the capital are bigger and better attended, so participants can start at their hometown bonfire and then attend the larger celebration. It's a community linked to the past that lights up the dark northern skies in celebration. Another Northern Greek custom, one that I've never heard of, is described at Tataki's blog, the ritual of Poupouris, practiced in Thrace since ancient times. Most of those in the region are descendants of ethnic Greeks driven from their ancestral homes in Asia Minor by the compulsory population exchange between Greece and Turkey decreed by the 1923 Treaty of Lausanne. Those in eastern Thrace, which was designated Turkish territory, were forced to pick up and move into western Thrace, ceded to Greece. The tradition of Poupouris went with them. It's an amalgam of ancient fertility rites, protection ritual, and the celebration of the birth of Christ. Its roots are in a masquerade celebration of Dionysos with singing and dancing, and the Christian era edition of singing the Galanta. The character at the center of this tradition is Poupouris, a fierce-looking goblin. I cannot get enough of Christmas goblins. But unlike the Kalikansari, he brings good luck and prosperity. The man masquerading as Poupouris wears traditional winter clothes of Thrace, including sheepskin, bells attached to what looks like a woolen kilt, and a mask made out of pumpkin with a long beak or nose. The eyes are hollow-looking and fierce. The mask has huge horns. His purpose is to scare off evil spirits. Poupouris is joined by his wife, Kotopula, similarly dressed and masked and always played by a man. Kotopula represents the fertile land and the advent of spring. Throughout the ritual, Poupouris chases off men going anywhere near his wife. He must wear his mask at all times, Tataki tells us, never showing his face. The entire village participates in the celebration, which begins with a parade to the village church, accompanied by musicians, where they receive a blessing from the priest. Poupouris and company stop by homes, dancing in their yards, singing and wishing prosperity and fertility to the homeowners in exchange for food and drink. I like that tsipura is the drink of choice. It's made from the residue of the crushed grapes in the wine press, and it's like 45% alcohol. Woo! Tatakis describes a village-wide celebration with, quote, dancing, singing, playing tricks, and giving away treats and Christmas delicacies. The ritual ends with a dance at the church square until late at night. It sounds like one incredible party. But my favorite story about the custom is that during the War for Independence, guerrilla fighters dressed as Poupouris, mask and all, in order to sneak back home to visit their families at Christmas. They blended right in with the celebration by pretending to take part in the festival. The custom went dormant for a while, but was revived a few years ago. Like the reappearance of the Karavaki, it's a welcome return to age-old customs special to Greece. I recommend going to George Tataki, TATAKIS.com to view photos of the bonfires and the Poupouris festival. He's a great resource for exploring traditional Greece in general. We'll drop a link in our episode notes, and George has graciously given us permission to post a few photos on our sources page. There are new Greek traditions, including stand-up surfing Santas and Pargas and a Santa run in Crete that raises money for a local children's shelter. Bravo! But it's the old traditions that fire me up and warm my heart. Please email us about any we've missed so we can share with our listeners. Chroniopola, happy name day to all of the Manolis, Emmanuels, Christos, Christulas, and Christinas. Thanks for listening. Greek Like Me is a Stealth Greek production. This episode was researched, written, and narrated by me, your host, Pamela Diodes Wood. Our producer, photographer, and post-production editor is Douglas John. Special thanks to George Tatakis for his kindness in allowing us to post some of his beautiful photos. Visit our website at stealthgreek.com for resources, photos, links, and more. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and on Instagram at Greek_like_me. Rate, like, and subscribe to help us keep making content about Greeks and Greek culture. Kala Christoyena. Yasas.